Welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. This is the place where we help mission-driven messengers just like you learn how to build and monetize your personal brand. My name is Rory Vaden, and I'm the co-founder of Brand Builders Group, a Hall of Fame speaker, and New York Times bestselling author. And this show is to help experts learn how to become more wealthy and well-known. I know you're going to love it. Thanks for being here. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Influential Personal Brand Podcast. AJ Vaden here. So excited for this interview. I love getting to talk about leadership and entrepreneurship. And in this episode, we're joined by the one and the only Megan Hyatt Miller, who is the CEO of Full Focus. She's a Wall Street Journal bestselling author and co-host of the Double Win podcast with her dad and one of my favorite authors, Michael Hyatt. This is an eye-opening conversation about mindset and redefining what success really looks like as a business owner, a leader, an entrepreneur, a mom, a wife, or simply a human being. This is a fantastic episode that we really kind of get to get a behind the scenes view of the architect behind Full Focus, which is an award-winning workplace culture, and also the creators of the best-selling Full Focus Planner. We're going to talk about scale and growth, and Megan is living proof that it's possible to scale at a thriving business and still be home by 3 p.m. to meet, in her case, her 5 still-at-home kids. Well, I guess one is not still at home, but 5 kids, 4 still at home at the door. She calls it the double win. And today she's showing us how we can achieve that too. So if you've ever felt stuck in the hustle with no exit in sight, then this conversation is your invitation to a better way to live, a better way to work, and a better way to simply move forward. So stick around, get ready for an enlightening conversation on leadership, productivity, home life, success at work, and ultimately what it means to flourish in the life that you have. I'm so happy that we are finally getting to sit down and have this conversation. For those of you who don't know, which is all of you, we were supposed to have this conversation like a couple of months ago, and Megan got sick right before we were supposed to record. And then between summer schedules and life, it took us, almost 2 months?
I know, it's kind of embarrassing.
And anticipation has been growing. So I'm so excited to be able to hit record and have this conversation today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, AJ. I've been really looking forward to this too. You know, I feel like we have so much in common, not the least of which is our red hair. It's like really red hair day today, which I love that. But we loved having you on our Double Win show. Gosh, that's probably been a year ago now. That was so much fun, you and Rory. And I love that we're getting to talk today.
Yes. And I love it that we're getting to have this conversation because as you guys know, Rory and I, we run different parts of our business at Brand Builders Group, and we run very differently in all spheres of life, to be honest, when it comes to household, our circles, everything. It's like, sometimes you're like, how do y'all function as a team? And we're really different. And one of the things that I love, because we've had Michael Hyatt on the show before, but what I love doing is having the business perspective to come onto the show and, you know, to help our audience get to know you a little bit. Like, yes, your dad is Michael Hyatt. You are the CEO, and there's an evolution that naturally takes place. And this is only personal curiosity because I come from a family business. My eldest is taking over our family business right now that I, at a very young age, knew I was not going to be a part of. It's in the construction business, and I knew that it was not going to be the path for me.
Not for you.
But I get to see, like, firsthand this, you know, generational shift from my grandfather started the business. My dad bought it from him in the 70s. Now my eldest brother is in the process of, you know, stepping in and starting to run the business while my dad is still in the business. And so to help our audience get to know you, because you are, not to discredit Michael or anyone else in the business, but you are the CEO and you are running the behind the scenes, and you have been spearheading a ton of scale and a ton of growth for Full Focus Planner and so many other things over the last several years. I would just like to start with, as you stepped into the role of CEO, which I think was 2021?
2021, kind of unofficially in 2020, but officially in 2021, January. Yeah.
What did that transition feel like? And so that's the first question, like help everyone. It's like, okay, for many of you listening, I just know it's like if you're in small business mode or entrepreneur mode, it's like you work with a spouse or a parent or a sibling or a
Yeah.
there's a lot of that happens in this world. So
Hmm.
that's my first question is what did that transition feel like? But then my second question is what has surprised you about
Mm.
stepping into this role with family that you did not expect?
Yeah. I love both of those questions. A couple of things. First of all, like you, my husband works in the business. He is our chief content officer. He actually reports to me. So that's funny too, you know. And then my sister is my youngest sister. I have four sisters, but my youngest sister, Marissa, is our chief marketing officer. And that has not always been true. Joel, my husband, has worked with us for a long time, since about 2014. But she's just come into this role in the last couple of years, and so we are really a family business. You know, we have our leadership team is primarily made up of family members,
Wow.
and it's so interesting. I'll come back to that in a second. But you know, when I transitioned into the CEO role, it was so unusual because COVID was still active and happening, and that was such a strange time in business. You know, in some ways, it feels like it was a million years ago. In other ways, you know, it's like PTSD. It feels like it was just yesterday. But it was a very interesting time from a leadership perspective because I was suddenly dealing with things both in 2020 and 2021 that wouldn't have been a normal course of a CEO transition. For example, we were dealing with the sudden transition to being fully remote, like everybody else. We were dealing with the loss of family members. We had several family members who had parents or other family members who passed away due to COVID. And
Mm.
so I was suddenly dealing with some pretty significant challenges that would not have been the normal course that would have unfolded had that not happened. I think it was a good thing in a lot of ways. I think it challenged me to grow and to dig in ways to think about culture in ways that I wasn't thinking about it before. It was something that was kind of easy to take for granted before. If you were a pretty good leader, as long as you had people in your office, you know, you could connect with them. But suddenly when they're not in your office, that presents a tremendous leadership challenge, especially under tremendously stressful circumstances, right? You know, we remember those days of everybody's trying to work with their kids home and, you know, trying to figure out all the protocols. It was just crazy. So, fortunately, I had the benefit of my dad making the decision many years before that he wanted this transition to happen. So, probably around 2016, 2017, probably 2016, he had made the decision that eventually this transition would happen. And I became not the CEO first, I became the COO. And that was a really great training round. It was kind of like a little incubator for becoming the CEO, where he was still acting as the CEO, but he really took me alongside him and folded me into the decision making process, explained how he thought about things like finance, which I didn't have a formal background in finance. And so I really had to learn on the job. And he would explain to me things like, how to read a P&L and how to think about profitability and how to think about the relationships between different business units and all those kinds of things that a lot of entrepreneurs, as I have found now, you know, fast forward, I coach a lot of CEOs and business owners, and they more often than not, as entrepreneurs, especially if they came from a solopreneur background, don't have a financial background. And so I like everybody else had to figure it out. And he was such a great mentor in that process. And you know, he's just such a great leader by nature. So I felt like I had the benefit of a lot of investment leading up to that transition, which was very helpful.
So you said he knew that he wanted to make this transition
Yeah.
and you in. When did you
Yeah.
know?
That's a great question. You know, it's funny when we go through these things, if you are in the middle of a family business, like document this stuff because you will just forget. It's like I was
Mm.
somewhere with one of my kids the other day and they were asking me, I have five kids, so, you know, it's a lot of details to keep up with. But somebody was like, well, when did she crawl? And I was like, hmm, I don't know. I forgot. You know, I feel like succession planning can kind of be the same way because, especially in a family business, it can happen sort of organically. It's not maybe the same as a big corporate transition where you have a succession and the board has to approve it and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. It was shortly thereafter that I knew. And I knew that when he moved me into the COO role, that was a transitional role. And I was in that role for, quite a few years. So we talked about it. I think one of the things, for those who don't know, is that my dad, Michael Hyatt, comes out of the publishing world. And in his role as CEO of Thomas Nelson Publishers in Nashville, he had a couple of unique experiences that I think were the setup for how he handled our succession. Number one, he worked with a lot of authors who will remain nameless to protect their guilt, who did really poor successions or had no plan at all. And so either their children or kind of the heir apparent was not identified or adequately prepared. And all manner of mayhem kind of came on the other side of that. Everything from it was difficult to retain talent or attract talent because it wasn't clear what the future of the company was. If you have, for example, like an 87-year-old founder of a ministry who didn't have a plan for when he or she was going to step away, it's hard to attract great talent to that organization because it feels like your own, certainty as a team member is unclear or, insecure. He also had a very dysfunctional transition, a succession transition when he became the CEO. His predecessor, and he talks about this openly now, who has now passed away, really had an identity crisis on the back end of that succession. And by back it, I mean like the day it happened, it was like, if I'm not the CEO, who am I? He said to my dad, and then spent 2 years trying to unseat him.
Mm-hmm.
It's just crazy, right?
Yeah.
So I think he had seen it go badly and he thought, I don't want it to go badly.
So one, sometimes, the best and biggest lessons we learn are from when it doesn't go right. So
That's right.
There's some gifts in preparation of like, okay, not that, right? At least process of elimination. So,
Yes.
one of the things that I would love for you to share with this, kind of audience is, we kind of get into this conversation around scale and culture and leadership, because I think you've done such a phenomenal job at all of those things.
Thank you.
What would you say you have learned from the transition from employee to like executive leader, and then executive leader, a COO to the CEO? Like what has escalation of things that you would say these are defining moments that other people should realize?
Yeah. Like a lot of people, and probably AJ, in fact, I know because we talked about it when we were opposite seats on our own podcast, we learn a lot of things the hard way, unfortunately. I wish it wasn't that way. I wish that somebody could just hand us, the cheat code. We could bypass all the hard lessons. That would be wonderful. It just sadly does not work that way. And I think part of that is because when we go through those difficult lessons, it really shapes who we are. And the truth is, the CEO that I am today is far wiser and more mature because of the difficult things that I've been through and also the mistakes that I've made. And I think one of the mistakes that I made early on is that I was so focused on delegating. I knew that I couldn't do it all, which was right. Of course I can't. But it was very easy for me to find other charismatic or people with high what is the word I'm looking for? Command. So I can think of people that I had on my team at various points who were very comfortable being in charge, who actually had a lot of ambition to be in positions of power. And in some ways that was great. I love ambition in a certain way. On the other hand, what that sometimes looked like is they were great at leading up to me. So the way that they served me, the way that they shared information with me, communicated was fantastic. The problem was what was happening downstream, I was insulated from. And in one case in particular, there was some really dysfunctional things going on that I was unaware of. And I thought, as I was hearing some things bubble up, I thought, that's a them problem. Like that's not, this person is not the problem, but in fact, it was that person. And I had to make some hard decisions to solve that. And then what was worse from a culture standpoint, when you've had a toxic type of leadership in your organization, then you have to, you have to play catch up and you have to clean it up. And I think that that was a powerful teacher for me of I have to maintain relationships throughout my organization. I have to know what's going on. I have to be careful that delegation doesn't become abdication, that I
Correct.
don't just have one voice in my ear that is sort of like the one source of truth. I need to have a group of sort of internal advisors that help me to see what's happening and really create a culture that's safe for dissent at all levels of the organization. And without my knowing, and that was on me, that changed in our organization and I had to go fix it.
That's good. I love that. I think that's sometimes a blurry line where it's like
Yep.
delegation versus abdication.
I
And it's
know it is.
can't do all the things, so you need help and
Yep.
support, but that doesn't mean you don't do any of the things and you don't stay involved and you're not in the loop and you're not
Yep.
participating. But I think, yeah, that delegation and abdication line it's a blurry one. And often
It is.
all of us, we have to learn through the mistakes and doing it wrong.
Yeah.
We'll like find your happy medium into this is
Yeah.
right. This is this little gray area that I can sit in between the
Yeah.
two.
Yes. I think that's right. And you've got to have people who will tell you the way things really are and not manipulate you because as you scale, as we were talking about a minute ago, as your organization scales, whether you're going from a solopreneur to hiring your first few employees or you have 50 or 100 or more employees, the bigger you get, the more disconnected you become naturally. Like that's what will happen if you don't do something to respond to that. And so you've got to be really careful that what information, and my dad, to his credit, he told me this, and I feel like I was a little slow to learn on it, but I certainly did in the end, that the higher you get in an organization or the larger the organization gets, the more information is filtered when it gets to you, whether that's financial information or
Sure.
HR information. And we've got to be on guard for that as entrepreneurs, as leaders, so that we make sure we have the information we need to make good decisions.
Yeah, that's good. And that's true. And it's like, again, it's that kind of fine line of like, how vertical do you want your organization versus how,
That's right.
and
Yeah,
there's a happy medium that we all kind of have
there
to,
is. Yeah.
um, no, I appreciate that a lot. And I think for a lot of us, like we hear a lot of people talk about, delegation, right? And I love that nuance of yes, but not abdication. And I think
Yeah.
that's really important leadership trait of what do you release completely versus where do you have
Yeah.
to keep some oversight? Now,
Yeah.
as I mentioned earlier before I asked that question, Full Focus has scaled significantly
It has.
under your leadership. So, couple of quick questions. What would you say to someone who is in growth mode, who is in a
Yeah.
scaling season of how have you maintained culture in the midst of rapid
Yeah.
growth?
Yeah. Well, I would say that culture is not something that you can delegate. If you're the business owner, CEO, this is easy to think this is just kind of like an HR function that as you build an HR team, you can just kind of hand that off like, to somebody and say, you plan the fun events and, maybe I'll show up and maybe I won't. Um, Obviously somebody else can plan the events. You don't literally have to plan the events, but culture is really the soul of the organization. And as the CEO, you are like the body that the soul lives in, to say to try to mix my metaphors a little bit. You've got to have your hands on the culture because culture is really just the externalization of your values and your behavioral norms and the connection that people feel or they don't feel to each other. And so
Mhm.
what I've learned over the years is that I've got to make sure that I am connected to my team now at different points at various stages of growth. That doesn't mean I can know everybody intimately, but I want to try my best to know as many people as possible. I want to know about their personal life. I want to talk about my personal life because we're not just robots. We may have robots very soon, but we're not robots. And we want to be known at work. We want to be seen. We want to be recognized. We want to feel like we belong. And I think in many ways, the CEO is the owner of that responsibility, though he or she may not do all the activities or tasks associated with that. So don't think you can delegate that. It's important for you to show up to things. It's important for you to sit down and have conversations with people. It's important that people feel like you're approachable and accessible. I think it's really easy as I'm an introvert, so this may be particular to being an introvert. It's really easy to just disappear into your office and try to like let somebody else handle the people. That is a mistake. It does not work well. We've got to have connections and relationships because at the end of the day, that's what growth runs on, our relationships.
I love that. What would you say that you have seen for your team, for your organization?
Mhm.
What are some of the best things that you guys have done or that you have seen done that
Yeah.
really instill culture?
Okay, I'm going to give you kind of a bigger, fancier idea, and then I'm going to give you something really basic. Um, First of all, our team is at this point mostly remote, but every Monday the team comes in and we have a team meeting and we have lunch together. And half of that lunch, so we have the meeting beforehand and then in the morning, and then we have lunch afterwards. The lunch has no agenda. It is not a meeting. The meeting part has already happened. We end up telling funny stories about our kids, places we went, for vacation. Like we just talk like people who like each other, and we do like each other. And while that's not productive time in the strict sense, I
Yeah.
actually think it's one of the most important things we do.
Yeah.
We just hang out together, and it is easy to dismiss the value of just hanging out. I don't think necessarily you have to have, some programming or play a game or whatever. We've done all that kind of stuff, and that's fun too, but just having a place where again you can be seen as a three-dimensional person. If you can get people together in person, that is certainly ideal. And what's going on in each other's lives. You know that Dave went out for his 25th anniversary last weekend and he went on a hiking trip with his wife. Or that Hannah did this or that. She was visiting some family members with her dog. Like we just need to know about each other, and I think that's what people really want from work. It's not gimmicks, it's being known. So the other thing that we've done at various points over the years is we've gone on trips with our team. So way back, we went on a couple of cruises with our team. We have also been to local resorts. I don't think this has to be, by the way, super glam and fancy and expensive. It can be, and we've done it both ways. It's really, of course, it's fun. But there's something that happens. I mean, just think about like when you were in college and you went on a road trip, or maybe you went to Europe and you did like a Eurail thing with a friend. There's something that happens when you have unstructured time with people and you're just together. You make memories, that those memories become equity. And that equity you can really draw on when you're in an intense or difficult season, whether that's somebody's personal situation or the business itself. And it's so valuable. So I think if your culture is new or not yet in a great place, doing something like a trip could be really awesome. Even if it's just a couple of nights. And we love including spouses whenever we can too, because we feel like, people are whole people, and that part of their life is really important to integrate into our life as a company.
I love that. And specifically because I think to still some degree, most people are hybrid remote at least. Now I have
Yes.
a growing sense of a lot of companies being like back in the office. Um,
Yes. Right.
there is still this hybrid nature or still complete remote nature. And
Yeah.
that present itself with a new cultural challenge that really
Yeah.
did exist
Hmm.
pre-COVID, universally speaking. We're in a unique position that we've always had hybrid environments, even in our former company. But a part of our desire in buying a building last year was like
Hmm.
we need a home base for our people to
Yeah.
see, to
Yeah.
get there.
Yeah.
One of the things that you said that I just find so fascinating because literally this earlier this week, I got totally Instagram marketed to by like one of the many parenting people I follow. And it was targeting me on this research study about kids and the importance of unstructured playtime with
Yes.
their age, non parental supervised. And it was interesting because this
Yep.
study asked children, not the parents,
Huh.
what parents need to know to help you stay off screens. What would
Oh,
incentive
wow.
to stay off screens? And I thought the answers fascinating. And then the study also shared all these statistics around the percentage of kids that actually have non parental supervised time outside of the home and how that
Ah.
increased significantly since the 70s and then the 80s. And there's this gradual decrease of, like we track our kids everywhere, got air tags on them. They all have cell
Yeah.
phones. Like, I'm going to avoid any political thoughts on this. I'm just going to state the facts. But I do think it was fascinating that the number one thing that research studies showed and that kids actually said is, I just need unstructured time with other
Yeah.
people. And to hear you say the you even said the words unstructured
Yeah.
time. It's
Yeah.
like, we're not all that different. Like we're just
Yeah.
we're just older.
Yeah, I know. I think that's really right, AJ. I mean, it's funny. It's funny to think because, like I said, I have 5 kids, and my 6-year-old daughter, who's my youngest, we have her now free to run around the neighborhood, and we have a bunch of kids in our neighborhood and play. And it was kind of unsettling at first because, my husband and he was born in 1975 and I was born in 1980. Like we 1,000% did that, but that
Whoa.
was not okay. Our 24-year-old, who was our oldest, definitely he was not running around the neighborhood. That was unstructured time that was not supervised with friends. Like that would have been totally looked down upon at that time. I feel like you said, there's kind of this resurgence of letting kids, be kind of wild and free, which I love. But I think we need that as adults too. I think that as our human connections have kind of moved away from institutions, and we could have a whole discussion about that and good or bad, and there's lots of opinions to be had, but regardless of the opinions, it is a fact. Like our human connections are not primarily coming from organizations we're a part of outside of work or church or other places. People are looking for that kind of connection and that kind of care from other people within the workplace. And as owners and CEOs and leaders, that's easy to miss because we're thinking about, I've got to get this work done. I need people to complete these tasks so that I can get these projects or services out the door so that I can bill for them, for example. But people are coming to us in part because they're looking for meaning and belonging and significance. And that's really easy to miss. But if we can tap into that and
Mhm.
understand it, then our ability to retain those people obviously goes up. But also, it's really satisfying to be in an organization where those things are happening. Honestly, even for us as entrepreneurs, it's fun. It's fun to work in a place where people enjoy each other, and the kind of collaboration and creativity that you get is huge. And I think a lot of that comes from that unstructured time.
Yeah, I love that. And it could be as casual as a lunch or it could be as
Yeah,
elaborate trip, but unstructured time where people can just become friends. And
exactly.
I love that because it really takes the pressure off of you as the leader.
It does.
I have to have this detailed agenda and we're going to do these, you know,
Yes.
building exercises or
Yeah. Yeah.
you just need
Don't do that.
people together and let community happen. And I love that. I think
Yes.
that's really valuable. And I love the trip part. Again, it's back to, it's like what it does, like a trip doesn't matter if it's an overnight, if it's local, but what happens is like it expedites the get to know you process.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
like about like any sort of like mastermind or group coaching program. Like
Yes.
I think the reason
Yes.
leaving your home environment and going somewhere with other people is like if there's this relationship acceleration that happens because you're in a new place, you're making memories together, you're learning new things together.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't happen in a everyday environment.
Yeah,
So I love
absolutely. And I
that.
think it's really easy in like a, kind of a virtual or more remote context. It can become very transactional because really you're dealing with people on Zoom and Slack, and it is all structured because everything is an appointment or responding directly to a message. And that's all fine. It's just there's not enough connective tissue there to keep everything together. You've got to have the other.
I love that. Now, okay, switching gears just a little bit, and this was a little bit of a conversation that we had prior to me hitting record, but connected to a similar topic that we're on through, scale and how do you maintain culture. But, you know, I'd love to talk about like a practice or a belief that has helped you
Mm,
stay grounded through seasons of intense growth as a leader, but then also
yeah.
company and kind of tied to
Hmm.
this whole idea of how do we make sure if we're winning at work, we're winning at home? And this
Yeah.
balance
Yeah.
that kind of has to happen of what does success look like through all the different areas of your life,
Yeah.
not just your 9 to 5
Yes.
or just home, but how do we have, wins everywhere?
Yeah. I think that's really important because it's easy, especially when you're in growth mode. I was just talking with someone about this morning, especially when you're in growth mode. You can become myopic and the only thing you're focused on is the growth. And then you look up and you realize, oh my gosh, I did it at the expense of my health or my family. And I thought this was going to give me more freedom and it was going to give me, a greater sense of well being or flourishing or abundance in my life. And it's actually done the opposite. I feel like a prisoner, and I think that that's the opposite of what we want. Like nobody wants this. I think most of us became entrepreneurs because there was a level of autonomy and of freedom to align our life with our values that is what we were chasing. And so we have to keep that in mind as we're scaling and we don't unintentionally kind of give that away along the way. At Full Focus, we have pioneered this idea of the double win, which is winning at work and succeeding at life. And really what that means for us is more than just winning or success. It really means human flourishing. You can be successful or win and not flourish, but what we want is human flourishing. And the way we think about that is we talk about it in terms of practices. I love thinking about practices because there's something that feels inviting and gentle about that. And I think as entrepreneurs, our kind of default is much more like 75 hard, or something like that. It just tends to be so intense and we need less intensity in our life, not more. And so the 6 practices of human flourishing are first of all, tending to yourself. We've got to care for our physical, mental, and emotional and spiritual well-being. We're not going to ultimately arrive at a place where we can say, I'm flourishing no matter what season of my life I'm in if I'm not attending to those things. So tending to yourself, connecting with others, just like we were talking about. And a lot of that can happen within your own company, but it's really critical that's happening outside of your company. You've got to build and nurture meaningful relationships. And then doing work that matters. And this is probably the one for a lot of us that comes most easily, but we want to be engaging in purposeful work that makes a contribution to the world. And again, that one usually we can check off without too much effort because that's why we started our entrepreneurial journey to begin with. But this is where it gets hard in the kind of second half of these 6 practices. Prioritizing recreation. If I have heard once, I've heard it 1,000 times from clients who are business owners. This is really difficult. But if we don't make time for play and hobbies, and I don't really even like those words because I think most of us as entrepreneurs kind of viscerally react to that. But actually, what we're doing is there is a restorative recreational as in recreative part of those things. For example, when I'm out in my garden, which I love to be, like if I'm just out there puttering in the garden doing whatever, that is kind of putting back all the little pieces of me that can feel all fragmented. It puts it back together and it puts me in a place where I'm at peace. My nervous system is regulated. I can come in and lead at a different level because I've prioritized recreation. So that's number 4.
Can we pause on
Experiencing nature. Oh,
can
yeah.
we pause on number
Sorry, go
4
ahead.
for a second? Mainly
Yeah.
because I every entrepreneur I know, I'm a part of EO Nashville, Entrepreneurs
Yeah.
Organization in Nashville, and this concept of hobbies is,
Yeah.
like, really hard for people to and they're like, "When?"
It's really hard.
When you think about work and then you're like and if you have young kids and it's like, I have a spouse, it's like, "When am I supposed to have a hobby?" So,
Yes.
there's 1, it's like, how do you fit that in? How do you
Yep.
prioritize that? But 2, you said there's something about being and I think this was really important,
Yeah.
about being in your garden that just it regulates me. Like,
Yes.
you find that because I think that's what when we think about
Yeah.
this isn't just for the sake of going to do something that's not work. It's like, no, like what's something that resets
Right.
you? What like
Yes.
literally resets your system. So how did you
Yep.
find that in gardening? So there
Yeah.
were 2 parts of how does this even enter
Where does
into
it fit in? Yeah.
how does this enter into
Yeah.
life?
Yeah.
How do you find the thing that
Yeah.
actually
I
sets
love that. Well, I love that because those are the questions I get all the time. And those are the questions that I ask myself for years. I have 5 kids. 3 out of 5 of my kids have special needs. There's always some crisis happening with my kids. And, I'm on the phone with the school, with the IEP people, or I'm doing a therapy conference like I was last week. So my life is not, is anything but not full. It is packed to the gills with all kinds of family and professional commitments. So I feel like if I can do it, anybody can do it. I'm a good case study because it's not an ideal scenario. What I'm not talking about necessarily, unless you're in a stage of life where this is realistic, is that you're going to go play 18 holes of golf on a Saturday morning. If you had a new baby last year or you just started a business, that's probably not realistic. And so when I think about these practices of human flourishing, I'm thinking about how can this be relevant in any season of our life? I've been at the stage where I did have a new baby 6 years ago, and that looked very different than it does today. And so I think that, first of all, hobbies, again, it's not a great word. We don't have a better word, which is so frustrating to me. I'm like, there's got to be a better word. But hobby sounds like something you do when you retire because you have so much extra time. And I mean, I don't know about you, but I've not sat around any time in the last 20 years and thought, you know what, I just need something to fill up my time. I don't have anything to do today, like it's like literally never happened. So I think instead what we need to think about this as like really enjoyable medicine to take. It's medicine for our soul. It's medicine for our nervous system. Most entrepreneurs struggle with anxiety. I know I do. And everybody I've ever coached, either diagnosed or undiagnosed, does. I think it just kind of goes with the territory. Our nervous systems are not naturally regulated. We are not naturally people who are at peace. That's sort of like diametrically opposed to ambition in a lot of ways. And so what we need are experiences that are embodied. Like usually this involves your whole body. So this is part of the answer to the second question. It doesn't count if you're like reading and learning. That is not an embodied. I mean, that's great for your professional life, but if you just have a research hobby, that's not what I'm talking about. That might be a hobby, but it doesn't serve the purpose of what I'm talking about. I want you to do something that engages your body, your physical senses. If you can do it outdoors, all the better. The next practice is about being in nature. And so a lot of times these two things can go together. You can make time for recreation, and you can also get out in nature. But think about when you go, maybe you're on vacation and you go do something. Maybe you go on a hike. Maybe you just go on a walk on the beach. Maybe you go to a new restaurant and you do like a tasting menu, and you just feel yourself exhale. You feel yourself come alive in some way, and you just feel that sense of peace simultaneously, like you feel at peace and you also feel alive.
Yeah.
And it can be literally anything. It can be, needlework. It could be a running group that you do with friends. So you're getting connection plus the recreational part. It doesn't have to be long. It could be 15 minutes 3 times a week. I will often go out in my garden and I'm just watering at night. I put my daughter down to bed and I go water. And it's like, it's not any more complicated than that, and that for me, I try to be barefoot, I stand in my garden, I'm listening to the bugs, I'm listening to the birds and whatever other sounds are going on. I'm saying hi to the neighbors. And in about 15 minutes, like I come in and I just feel I'm breathing differently. My heart rate is at a different and lower place. And that's what we want. And it's not about like checking off self-care boxes. I don't like that because that just feels like another task. It's like, what restores my soul? What gives me peace? What fills me up? What puts me back together? Like that's what we're talking about in this particular practice.
Way more than a hobby. And that's
Way
kind of
more than a hobby.
that's why I wanted to ask. And it's because I feel
Yeah.
like, I feel some of that. And it's like, this isn't like just going to find something to do. It's like, what's that thing that
Yes.
soul? That's so good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
When you said the one was be in nature.
Yep. Be in nature, experience nature. And then the last one is stay open to the sacred. And, regardless of what your spiritual perspective is, I'm a Christian. And so for me, this looks like spiritual practices related to that. But cultivating your own spiritual connection, your sense of transcendence. No, it's not healthy to feel like you're God in your own life. It's not healthy to feel like everything depends on you. Like we need to have a sense in a healthy way of how small we are, that we're a part of something bigger, that we're held, that we're cared for. Like those are very important realizations. And so, that for me, that looks like prayer time in the morning. Sometimes it looks like going to a midweek church service. It might look totally different for you, and that's fine. There's many ways that it can look. But human beings are not meant to be everything unto themselves, and the pressure of being an entrepreneur can make it feel like we have to play God a lot. And I think it can be so healthy and such a relief to stay open to the sacred and realize, okay, it's not all up to me. That's just like, oh, okay, good. I can exhale again.
Like, thank gosh, I had no idea what I was doing. You know?
Right. I'm like just making it up.
I love that. And I love those 6 practices. I
Yeah.
think, I mean, that is, it's like when you think about like the question, it's like what helps you stay grounded in seasons
Yes.
or chaos or
Yes.
season. It's like these are great practices across
Yep.
the board. And I love it. It's like this is different than success. This is what does it mean to
Yeah.
flourish? Not just have
Yes.
stuff, but to actually
Yeah.
be at peace within yourself and flourish. I love that. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
watching the clock. I know that we have limited time, but I have like 3 other quick questions for you. Okay.
Great. Let's go.
What's one leadership myth that you have overturned since becoming CEO?
Ooh. Um, that you have to follow a conventional path.
Mm,
My dad before me was kind of typical male CEO, big corporate background, led a public company, then started a second company. Like that. That's a pretty common story, among people that are successful. I came in at the time as a mom of 4 kids with special needs. Later, we adopted a 5th child. I knew that I could only work from 9 to 3 because I had to be home with my kids after school. And that's not a lot of CEOs are doing that. Not a lot of CEOs would give themselves permission. In my case, it wasn't so much about permission. It was more about this is what has to happen for my life to work, for me to honor the stewardship role that I have as a mother to my children and what I signed up for when I became their mom, since it was a little of an unconventional path with adoption and so forth. I set those boundaries really early on, and I've stuck to that for years and years and years. And it can work. You can have big constraints, unconventional constraints, and still be very successful.
oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, not the hours you work, it's what you do in the hours that you work.
that's right. That's exactly right.
I love that. That's so good. Okay, next one. What's one unexpected leadership lesson you wish you had known earlier?
Ooh, how important data is.
Oh,
So, yeah, like most companies in a high growth phase, there was a period where we were really growing, but our data, financial data, marketing data, everything was just a mess because the way that you typically build these things, it's like, a patchwork quilt of this platform and that platform and this spreadsheet and this person that led to this person. And it just becomes a mess. And there comes a point where you have to clean it all up. And I'm telling you, that is a painful process. We are well on the other side of that now. And I'm so grateful. But I think I underestimated how important it is, especially as someone who's, to use the Colby assessment, if you're familiar with that like language. I'm a quick start. I like to take action. I'm not a systems person. Like that's not my gift. And it was easy for me to downplay how important it was to have systems that ultimately enable me to have high quality data that I could trust. And so I've had to kind of learn that lesson the hard way of making sure that all the systems talk to each other, that there's integrity with all of them, and that I'm getting out of those things the information I need to make good strategic decisions. And so I didn't know that early on in the way that I do now.
I love that. I think that one of the things that a lot of people like if I was to ever play a game and they said, "What's something about you that people wouldn't guess?" is that
Yeah.
I'm a data nerd. I love
Yes.
spreadsheets, I love Excel, and people are like, "You do?" I'm like, "Yes." Like I love that, and I think somebody told me early in my entrepreneurial career, they were like, "The best decisions happen from good data."
Yes. 1000%.
That is latched onto, and became really obsessive about. And you're right. Like actually getting data is not easy. It
It's
takes
not easy.
the right systems, the right
Yep.
analysis, frequencies, the right, timing. It's
Yeah,
really does take like a concerted effort. But if you
it
do it
does.
right, which takes time and effort, it does make your
Hmm.
decision simpler. Maybe not easier,
Oh
but it does
yeah.
simpler.
Yeah, it
Um,
does. It does.
okay, I'm on the clock. I know I have two rapid fires, and so I'm going to split this into two. Right. So, and this is just for those of you who've never been introduced to the Full Focus Planner and Full Focus. I was like, I have it handy over there, but I use the quarterly planners. I just got
That's
like the
great.
big, like 8x11 planner.
Oh,
So
good.
here's my question for you, and because it's all in the realm of productivity, and I've split it. What's your favorite productivity tool besides the Full Focus Planner?
Um, I would say this is a practice in the Full Focus Planner, but we did not come up with this. It's not original to us, and that is doing a weekly preview process. So again, this is all guided in the Full Focus Planner, but essentially what it's doing is it's looking back on the prior week and it's saying what went well, what were my wins, which by the way, if you're an entrepreneur, you have long since forgot your wins by the time you get to Friday. You can't even remember what happened on Monday because so many things have happened. So that's great for your confidence, but then also assessing what worked and what didn't, and what I want to take into the next week, and then what's coming up and what do I have to accomplish this week. So in our language, we would say, you said a weekly big three. What are the three outcomes I must accomplish in the next week? And if I don't go into the new week without that clarity, if I step into that and I'm just kind of like being whipped around by my calendar or by incoming requests, which of course happen all the time, I am not going to steward that week as
Mm.
well as I would if I go in with a plan. I know what's happening. I don't feel anxious. And so I think that practice, I typically do that on Sundays in the afternoon when my daughter's having quiet time. I'll just sit down for, half an hour or so, and I'll go through that process. And it just makes me feel like, okay, I know what's happening. I know what I need to get done this week. And as all the noise is swirling around, I am able to focus on what matters most, regardless of what else is happening.
I love that. And I love just the concept of a weekly preview isn't just the week
Yeah.
ahead, but reflection of
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
the last week that helped
Right.
inform the week. I love
That's
that.
right.
I wrote that down. I'm gonna put that into my practice because I think what so many people do is they
Yeah.
immediately it's like, well, that's done. What's next? That's done. What's next?
Yes.
And just
Yes.
a moment of reflecting of what worked, what didn't. I think all of that is
That's
so.
right.
The
Yeah.
second part to this productivity thing has a little bit more to do with life, work, family, all the things. So, if there was one tip or practice
Mm.
or suggestion that you have learned maybe the hard way of how do you help people who are in the throes of
Mm.
running and managing a business and running and managing a family,
Yeah.
would you say just one thing that everyone needs to know that helps
Yeah.
them flourish?
Yeah. I think if you want to flourish in a season where your plate is very full at work and at home, you've got to establish non negotiables. And what I mean by that is you're not going to be able to do it all. That is completely a lie. You will not be able to be at everything. You will not be able to do everything you want to do. You're going to have to make choices. And the question is, what's the criteria for the choices? When I made the decision when our middle boys came home from Uganda, when we adopted them in 2011, I decided one of my non-negotiables was I was going to be done every day at 3 o'clock, which meant I said no to all kinds of stuff, but I was optimizing for being home at 3 o'clock. Like that was key. I also said one of my non-negotiables was that 5 nights a week we were going to eat around the table. Now, I mean, I cooked every night, for that. Sometimes it was like Chick-fil-A, but we sat down at the table and we have done that for years and years and years. And now I can look back and say, that feels really good to me that I'm so glad I made those two choices. And those were personal choices, but I made my work submit to my non-negotiables. And I didn't make non-negotiables like 20 things. Like you can probably have up to 3 non-negotiables and that's it. But really think to yourself, and this doesn't apply only if you have children or children at home. Think about what are you optimizing your life for outside of work? And what does work have to do to conform to serve those outcomes? Because work is not outside of making a meaningful contribution. Success is not an end in of itself. Money, achievement, like these are not ends in of themselves. Like we're usually pursuing these to make things happen personally in a lot of ways. And so ask yourself the question, what are my non-negotiables?
And then make your work submit to those.
Yeah. And make your work submit.
I wrote that down. That's so, so,
Yeah.
so, So good. Um, Megan, I could ask you 15 more questions and take this another hour. And I know that we don't have that. But I do want to encourage everyone, like if you are not already connected to Megan, like connect with her. So Megan, if you were to tell people like, hey, if you just want to connect with me and hear from me, where's the best place or what's your preferred?
Yeah. Yeah. So, first of all, check out our website at fullfocus.co, not com, fullfocus.co. I'm getting ready to move my newsletter. You can sign up for that on our website right now. I'm getting ready to move that to Substack. So I'm really excited about that process because I think it'll enable me to connect with a lot more people that way. But I do write a newsletter every other week, and that will soon be weekly on Substack. And I talk about human flourishing there. So that's a great way to connect.
And also, everyone should also check out the Double Win podcast.
Yes.
Put the link in the show notes. It's an awesome podcast, co-led, co-hosted, and just
Yeah.
really valuable for everything we talked about today. It's
Right.
winning in multiple places of your life. It's homework, but ultimately, how do you have human flourishing? This has been a phenomenal episode. Thank you so much for being on the show. I wrote down personal notes. I now have 3 specific action items. So
Love
uh,
that.
I took away something everyone else who's listening did too. So, Megan, thank you so much for being on the show. For everyone who is listening, we'll see you next time on the Influential Personal Brand. See you later, guys.